Good morning, everyone. It is time for another Philosophy Freakin' Friday. I've got an epic freaking breakfast sandwich with me that I put way too much remoulade on, so it's very wet and very a bit yucky. You finished reading Blood Meridian today? How was that? I fucking love that book. It's good. Wow. A Friday for philosophy? Who could have known? That is a book that bites you, yeah. It's Friday once again. Hey, Ellie, if you're around, you're welcome to join us. I'd love to explain Renaissance Neoplatonism to you. It always helps to have somebody to bounce off of for things this complicated. So if you'd like to jump in co-com, you're welcome to. It's Friday and I'm in love. Why skipping of medieval philosophy, though? We're gonna talk about it. Ah, darn. Well, thank you anyway, Ellie. Good luck with your forklift pervert activities. I don't care if Monday's cock, Tuesday, Wednesday suck a fuck, Thursday, Friday in the muck, it's Friday and I'm in love. Hey, it's okay if you got a lurk, that's more than fine. We're not doing anything too interesting. Hello, Skittle. How's the music sound? Could be a little quieter. That was what I was thinking, yes. How's this? How are we sounding? Now you can barely hear it. For some reason, the YouTube playlist that I use is extremely loud, so I have to keep it at 5 to 10% loudosity. How's that? Was Ficino the one who wrote the 900 Theses on the Use of Kabbalah? No, that's Pico della Mirandola. That's good? Okay, dope. All these guys are freaking Italian. They're all, yeah, they're all Italians. Which one was messing with the Medici's wife? That was also Pico. It was actually on the way to deliver the 900 Theses to the Pope that he slept with the wife of a Medici and then got thrown in prison and then had to get bailed out by a different Medici. It is awesome. He's a fascinating character. Was this before or after he became the Newgrounds mascot? Maybe a different Pico. Although I'm not sure, I've never actually checked. It could be Pico della Mirandola, but I don't think he was a redhead. I'll have to return with my findings. Research is ongoing, indeed. What have you all had for breakfast? I'm still finishing my delicious, delicious sandwich. Burger, rice. Certainly more of you than two have eaten. Bao buns, excellent. Okay, but what's in the bao buns? Also, hello, infamous Urkich. Coffee and granola, hot and scratchy. That does sound nice. Vanilla latte protein bar. That's probably more sugar than protein. Little salad, bacon, egg sandwich. That sounds like a very nice, complete breakfast. Buckwheat and cabbage rolls? Like, what form of buckwheat, though? Was it just, like, in the cabbage rolls? Or was it, like, gruel? Boiled? Monty. I fucking love Monty. There are so many good Turkish dishes that are just like an egg cracked over other yummy. Yeah, no, it's not gruel. Gruel is like, I believe it's 1-to-1 flour and water. It buns with weird chicken in them. Prepackaged chicken, pastry, anything can sometimes be the nastiest thing ever. Alright, I think we're about to start. Use peanut butter powder to make protein pancakes, they're pretty good. I've been getting on the protein powder train. Like, as I've been working out and everything, I've been having to pay attention to my protein intake. Hi, Garden Snail. Welcome to chat. I have like a coffee and protein powder right next to me. Scallion pancake beefs wraps are tempting me, but I have to make cilantro, pick the cilantro out of them. Yup. All right. So, Renaissance esotericism. So the reason that we're kind of going to be skipping over the medieval era is largely because it's very samey. Like, and we don't know much about the actual personages of it. Like, if you look into medieval era esotericism, there's basically two things. You have the European grimoire tradition, which is like Solomonic shit. Or you have various, like, what do you want to call it? Christian charismatics, like Christian mystics. People basically saying, like, I had a divine revelation. And while those guys are interesting, there isn't much, like, magic based on them, right? Like, it doesn't... I love Joachim of Fiore. He did not affect Western esotericism all that much. And so while the history of Christian mysticism is interesting in and of itself, it is kind of a branch of Western esotericism that doesn't inform the broader tree. You have to wake up extremely early for work today, but it means I get to catch some Philosophy Friday. Fuck yes! Welcome, Solren! Welcome! So, that's basically why we're not going to be talking about it too much. There's, like, the Grail mythology, but it's really just mythology. Like, you don't actually see much in the way of, like, interesting texts or new ideas coming out of the Grail mythology. It's more like an organizing mythology around the esotericism of the period. Like, when later Renaissance esotericists look back and talk about, like, well, what intellectual tradition, what esoteric tradition am I a part of? It almost always involves crusaders and Grail mythology in some way. There's an excellent book about it called Foucault's Pendulum, if you want to read about that. That's a joke. Don't actually do that. It's not a history. In fact, Umberto Eco is like a little bit scornful of esotericism. What about early Kabbalah? Well, Kabbalah showed up in the Renaissance. D.S. Paul, 1983. Welcome to chat, by the way. And we're going to talk about that. So, the guy who invented Kabbalah, like Moshe de Leon, he was writing the Zohar at exactly the same time that he was writing that shit at basically the same time that, what do you call it? Thomas Aquinas was writing Summa Theologia. It's basically the same period. Like the event that everyone points to that sets all this shit off is the invasion of Constantinople by Mehmed II in 1451. Somebody Google that and tell me if I'm an idiot. I think it's 1451. But that's your standard Istanbul, not Constantinople type thing. That's when the shit changed. What am I doing here? And basically what that did was, like, for the time, Constantinople was the place to be, you know? 1453, damn. 1893, I say, with utter confidence. Yeah, 1453. I was a little late. So everyone says, like, that was the intellectual capital of Christianity for the time, right? That was where all the scholars lived. That was where all the big important scribes lived. And there's a lot of, like, kind of middling history that says, like, oh, they took their manuscripts and ran west into Italy. And then suddenly Italians had access to Plato. And then they were able to translate works of Greek philosophy into Latin, and it caused the Renaissance. It's weird how there aren't really any famous Byzantine philosophers the average person can name, despite how big a deal Byzantium was. Well, they all sound Roman, right? I think there's a decent array of Byzantine philosophers that people can name, but they all sound Roman, right? They have names like fucking Boethius and shit. Yeah, Plethon. Like, it's around, but also they're like, a lot of them are just talking about Plato. It's like it's endless commentaries on Plato. And so they left kind of less of a mark on the history of philosophy than a lot of other people otherwise would have. So, okay. You've got this thing. People are moving west and bringing their manuscripts with them. That's not really true. What actually happened was, like, all the scholars that were, like, living in Constantinople and working there was a damn war on, and they needed to move west to just be refugees. Like, people have had these manuscripts of Plato sitting around, like, just in general. Like, it's been in fragments for a while, but this was the first, like, one of the first periods past the Dark Ages where they were all in the same place, and, they were all in the same place, and there were people who had the money to translate them, and it would have been, like, for the Medicis doing this translation, it would have been politically efficacious to translate them, right? It's like it was a smart move, because being the guy who translates all of Plato all at once into Latin for the Christian-speaking world, that's a huge amount of political power, right? Being able to oversee that translation gives you an enormous amount of clout. And that's basically what, I forget which specific Medici it was that was funding it, but there was a guy who was trying to restart Plato's Academy right here in Italy. And they found a guy to do it. They was like, okay, we got to find a guy who's really good at ancient Greek and then have him translate all of Plato, like all these manuscripts into Latin. And he found a guy named Marcio Ficino, who was really good at Greek and really good at Latin. And so they handed him, it was Cosimo de' Medici, thank you. So they handed him this big old stack of manuscripts. But before we go on, we got to set up one more thing. The other big element of this era is Al-Andalus, right? It's think of Spain on a map, right? There's a lot of... So from the previous couple centuries, Spain was owned by the Umayyad Caliphate, right? It was a Muslim empire. But there were a lot of Christians living in Spain, and there were a lot of like very intellectual Christians living in Spain, and there were a lot of Jews living in Spain. And so at the same time, you had what... I forget what the damn Spanish term for it is, but it literally means something along the lines of like the coexistence or something, the comendia or something. That is probably not the word. Please forgive me there. But it's like the area of Al-Andalus in southern Spain was famous for having all these different religions, more or less peacefully. Convivencia, thank you. This is why having a chat is so useful. Yeah, they were all living together in relative peace and harmony, and they were all reading each other's shit, right? You had rabbis reading shit with priests and imams all right next to each other and living together in relative harmony. Every religion pervert is eventually obsessed with Al-Andalus for this reason, because it's such an interesting time and place to exist. Ziryab was also there. There is so many interesting, like every major, all the big three all had like huge important figures from that period in that area. That's also where the Western world got a lot of these manuscripts, right? Because it's the gateway to Northern Africa, obviously. So obviously there's like a lot of manuscripts coming in Arabic. Not necessarily Greek manuscripts, but Arabic translations of Plato and Aristotle, which is what a lot of scholars in the Holy Roman Empire were working from. They were working from these Arabic manuscripts because there were a lot of like Arab scholars living in Spain. So it was pretty easy to like get somebody to like translate a passage or a particular thing for you. So these are the two big ingredients. You've got the immigration of scholars into Italy, and you've got the convivencia. So they get all these manuscripts together and they plop them down in front of Marsilio Ficino, and he, like, this guy's a pervert for he's a pervert for Plato. He really wants to translate Plato. He loves Plato. He feels like super honored that he's the one who gets to translate Plato. The other thing is they didn't just put Plato's works in front of them, because you remember for the time there were a lot of like pseudo-Aristotle works and commentaries on Plato from our boy Plotinus and the Neoplatonists. And so on that, like on his desk, they also dropped a lot of Neoplatonist literature and a complete copy of the Hermetica, right? Like they didn't really know what it was. They were just like, "Can you translate this, please?" And Ficino didn't really care. Like he did do a translation of the Hermetica, but from everything I've read, I can't read Latin, but all of my Latinist friends have said like his translation is not good. It's not. It was clearly done in a rush, probably because he was like, "I want to get back to the real shit. I want to get back to Plato." So his translation of Hermetica is not very good. However, he wasn't the only person who had access to this manuscript. Another one was a guy named... Yes, it's Soren. That's a good point. There's a very few points in history where a single translator has had that much political power in his hands. But he wasn't the only one trying to translate Hermetica. There was also Ludovico Lazzarelli, who was like obsessed with Hermetica, and he became like the first Renaissance Hermeticist. Most of the people, like most of the translations that we have of Hermetica up until very recently came from Lazzarelli's translation. I heard that he rushed because he thought that Hermes Trismegistus taught Moses and it was more important than Plato. You could make that argument, but like the most convincing argument that I've heard is that he just like didn't care, because it's weird, right? It's it's weird, and it's comparatively short compared to like the Timaeus and shit. So it's like, I'll just get this fucking over with quickly. Whatever. Who cares? Yeah, it's like it's also not a good translation. Like his Ficino's translation of like the Phaedrus and shit is reportedly pretty good. It's like a real solid translation of Plato. So okay, the thing with doing this is that remember, Plato's a pagan philosopher, right? There's a lot of shit in Plato that definitely conflicts with Renaissance Christianity. So you've got to pull some interesting theological and philosophical tricks to kind of paper over that fact, or not paper over, but like make Plato work with the Christianity of the time, which, just for comparison, this is like Catholicism at its most militaristic. This is especially over in Spain. This is Christianity at its most militarist, like racist, authoritarian, all that shit. So there's a lot of shit like, okay, famously, I forget which tractate it's in, but Plato has a whole section on like the nature of divine knowledge and whatnot, and how there's like the knowledge of love and noesis, and like is talking about all these ways where it's like, yeah, a philosopher has to like comprehend the world of forms primarily, like from first principles, or is able to do that at some point. And that's kind of a crazy thing to say, especially for Christians, like the idea that it's even possible to like comprehend the world of forms as it's known in the mind of God, because that was kind of the line that Christianity took for the time, was like, oh, like the nous, the mind of God, as Plato says it, is just like that. It's the mind of God, right? It's what God is thinking about. And so when you read, or no, that's not Ficino. That was later. You get basically about a generation later. You get the second big guy, the founder, the guy who's basically considered the founder of like Renaissance esotericism. You get Pico della Mirandola, and he was like, you know, Ficino was just kind of like a translator trying to make it work that had an interest in like pagan philosophy. Mirandola was like a full-on fucking like he was a wizard, right? He was a full-on damn wizard. Is the concept of the nous at all distinct from the ordering logos of God? Oh, I misspoke. Good catch. Yes, the concept of the logos is the mind of God. So Pico della Mirandola is like the esotericist of the period. Partially because he incorporated a second thing, a second ingredient into the world of Western esotericism. And that ingredient was the newly formed science of Kabbalah, right? Right around this time, a little earlier, you've got fucking Moshe de Leon down there in Spain, and he wrote, it's like, okay, he wanted to expand the Torah, right? Or he wanted to do, like, there's all these different kind of semi-official forms of Jewish exegesis, right? Like all these kind of semi-official forms of like reading the Bible, all this various Jewish mythology that comes from earlier forms of Jewish mysticism, like the Hechelo and Merkaba traditions. And he's looking at all of this, and he's kind of, I'm massively overstating this here, but he's kind of wondering, like, how does all of this actually fit into Judaism at large? Like what ties all of this together? And so he writes a text called the Sefer Zohar, which is the foundational text of Kabbalah. It's also his attempt to solve a lot of the sort of nagging issues with Jewish theology at large. A big one that rabbis have always been like interested in debating is the like the concept of what do you call it? it's a transcendence versus eminence, right? How do you have a God that can interact with the world that is also infinite, right? The way that Christians say that is like you got Jesus is the one that interacts with the world. God is outside the world, and then you have the Holy Spirit that's kind of the bridge between them. And Judaism has to work a little bit harder to solve that issue. And the way that Moshe de Leon does this is with the concept of the Sephirot tree, right? The famous esoteric diagram that basically I'm sure everyone listening has seen at some point. Like, that is essentially a diagram of how God spills down from the infinite into the finite, right? It's a diagram of how God emanates into the world. But that structure is itself the sort of, like, it's the core of the actual project that Moshe de Leon was trying to do, which is incorporate a lot of the interesting, like, earlier Jewish mysticism from, like, the early medieval period into contemporary Judaism. And he does that with all sorts of... The main glue holding it all together is, like, language games, like Gematria, Notaricon, things like adding up all of the numbers, like, or... Every Jewish letter is also a number, and so he's like doing biblical exegesis based on like adding up all of the numerical values of the words and whatnot. Now, he didn't invent this, right? This is something that people have been doing for scripture since like the ancient Greeks had written text, but Judaism is an especially good. It's an especially flexible language for this way. Like, there's a lot of inbuilt flexibility and context-heavy elements of Judaism and Hebrew as a language that makes this an especially good way to approach, or an especially useful way to approach exegesis, right? Yeah, basically trying to wring every ounce of meaning he possibly can out of the Torah. Like, the essence of Jewish Kabbalah is basically figuring out a new way to read the Torah, which is an extremely Jewish way of approaching mysticism. Gematria is basically Warframe for weird theologians. I don't understand what the comparison is, but sure, why not? Whatever. So, okay. So while all of this is going on, you've got Queen Isabella of Spain, who, like, Spain. You've got the Alhambra Decree, which is basically them saying, like, we're kicking out every Jew in Spain. Like, either get out by the end of the year or convert to Christianity. Like, they're trying. Same thing with like all the Muslims, right? We're just trying to kick everyone out. We're trying to re-Christianize. Give us all of your, like, property and control of the legal system back, please. It was a terrible idea. It sent Spain into it basically crippled their legal and economic infrastructure for like 100 years. It was an idiotic thing to do. Largely because the Spanish crown at the time was, like, politically desperate for reasons I can't remember. But this led to the rise of conversos as a category of people in Spain. Basically, like, rabbis and imams who, like, rather than leave and head to the Levant, were like, I'm just gonna stay here with my community, and we're just gonna, like, slap a Christian coat of paint and just keep doing whatever we're doing, right? And also, a lot of rabbis just didn't care. A lot of them were just like, whatever, Christianity, Judaism, I'm just here to, like, take care of my community. Obviously a terrible decision to have to make, but there were a myriad of responses that various Jewish and Muslim communities had to this. And this fucking terrified the Spanish crown. The idea of, like, falsely converted heretics was, like, fucking terrifying to them. It was a constant source of anxiety to them. That's basically what the Inquisition was for, was, like, finding was like torturing people who were believed to be false converts. And they were very bad at it. Like, most people didn't really care all that much. Like, the idea of, like, crypto Jews and crypto Muslims was, like, absolutely terrifying to them. So a lot of, during this period, the fucking, like, Jewish holy texts and Qurans were being burned. Like, if they just found non-Christian texts, they just set them on fire. They were trying to de-Christianize, or they were trying to Christianize as much as fucking possible. Wasn't this the same time they sent Columbus out into the world? Yes. And this is also the period where they are trying to convert Native Americans to Catholicism. And the colonists were equally terrified of false converts. Like, the utter terror of conversos in Spain, like, very much bled into the colonies and their attitudes towards Native Americans. Like, it was a very, very constant source of anxiety for them. Like I said, this is Catholicism at its most militarist, at its most brutal. Yes, we do not stand Queen Isabella of Spain. She's quite problematic. So at this period, you've got fucking... So a lot of the... Like, Pico saw this conversos and the wars between, like, Christians and Muslims as, like, a huge source of strife within the Christian world, along with, like, the rising Protestant Reformation. Pico was actually occasionally referred to as a proto-Protestant because of his, like, general... He has some things he said that are, like, generally in alignment with early Protestantism, but you can say that about, like, basically anyone that was even a little bit critical of the Catholic Church for the time. Enacts, like, 5 things and gets super scared and nervous about all of them. Yeah, interesting how that keeps happening, by the way. It's like, oh, fuck, the consequences of my actions, shit. Where was I? So, okay. So, you get this... So, Pico della Mirandola is like, fuck yes, I love Plato, I love Aristotle, I love Hermetica and whatnot. And he sees Kabbalistic texts as, like, a way to heal these, like, rifts between different religions. He's like, dude, we can do this to Christianity and figure out a logical way to, like, prove that Christianity is the one true religion and get everyone to convert. And then we won't have to go to wars with anyone anymore, because every Jew and every Muslim will see the error of their ways, and we'll destroy them with facts and logic, and they'll all have to convert to Christianity, and everything will be better. So there was a lot of that, right? A lot of that type of thought going on. And so he wrote a book called the 900 Theses that was basically him trying to prove the perennial wisdom of Christendom, right? It was him saying, like actually all pagan texts, and not only do all pagan texts prove the supremacy of Christianity and that Christianity has been true the whole time, but even a lot of non-Christian scripture proves that. Wasn't the entire facts and logic thing originally Raymond Lull's idea? Kind of. He wasn't the guy that invented perennialism. People have been doing that since, like, fucking St. Augustine. Lull loved logical argumentation to a degree that a lot of other Christians didn't really take it. He's interesting. He loved graphs, like that kind of level of facts and logic argumentation. Taking him to the modern day, and there's, like, a mosque on one corner and a temple on the other and a church a block away, and he just starts crying. Well, no, it's like a lot of these guys kind of knew that was how things were in a lot of Christendom. Like, he wasn't, like, okay, also, Pico was, like, super racist and anti-Semitic, but it wasn't that kind of racism and anti-Semitic. He wasn't, like, scared of Muslims or Jews, but he was, like, he saw them as, like, children that just didn't get it. They're just so stupid. They just don't understand that I'm logically correct with all of my facts and logic. Like, that was kind of his opinion, right? Yeah, he wasn't Lovecraft. He wasn't like terrified. There were definitely Spaniards that were like that though. Like there were a lot of the colonists over in the Americas were definitely like that. Like they were fucking terrified of the natives. And Pico was like, this man sounds like a nightmare to interact with. He was kind of like, a lot of his shit did kind of have some sauce, but within the context of Christianity, right? It's like, if you apply some Kabbalistic ideas to Christianity, you do churn up with some interesting things. But he was mostly interested in like syncretism. He was like, I really want this type of shit to just be in Christianity. But it takes kind of another generation for Johannes Reuchlin. I think his first name is Johann, but Reuchlin to be like, he's the founder of like Christian Hebrew studies, right? The other thing with Pico is that he wasn't good at speaking Hebrew. Like his skill at languages were kind of subpar, but like once you look at the list of people that taught him Hebrew, it's like, oh, no wonder you had like really weird opinions about what the Torah actually said. It was like, one of his teachers was like the last Jewish Averroist, who was a converso who was trying to like just kind of keep it on the DL. And then one of them was like Flavius Mithridates, who was utterly shameless converso, who was like who kept getting hired to translate Kabbalistic texts into Latin, and he would just like do it wrong on purpose for the paycheck. Like he's hilarious. And he was like, yeah, I'll teach you Hebrew, whatever. And like he's literally that joke of like, we taught him wrong on purpose as a joke. And then Pico's last Jewish teacher was this guy who was just like straight up a magician, like this converso rabbi who was like making amulets in in his house and selling them and shit. Like it's a hilarious time to like be interested in textual histories. And so those are the people who taught Pico Kabbalah, or not Kabbalah, but Hebrew, right? So he wasn't very good at it. His interpretations of like Jewish scripture are not, they're not very good. So, okay. Then you've got Johannes Reuchlin, who wrote De Verbo Mirifico, the wonder-working word, or the miracle word. And this is the guy who's basically considered the founder of Christian Hebraism. Like the first guy to like be a Christian and be like, let's study Jewish scripture and see what we can learn about Christianity from it. And Reuchlin has the fucking sauce. He's like, okay, this is a guy who wrote about Christian Kabbalah, right? He came up with the concept of the Pentagrammaton, right? Basically using concepts from Kabbalah and then applying them to Christianity to enshrine, like you take the Yod He Vov He, and then you enshrine the Hebrew letter Shen at the center of it. At the center of it, like the cornerstone of an arch is the term that he uses, as this singularly most powerful magical and theological word that from this the Christ completing the esoteric name of God is the sort of key that unlocks all esoteric and mystical scripture always and forever. And okay, he did such a good job of this that fucking Gershom Scholem was like, he's really good at this. Like the scholar of Kabbalah in the modern era was like, this dude knew what he was talking about. Like that's not nothing, right? The concept, like Reuchlin's version of Christian Kabbalah does absolutely have some sauce. And it was actually the other thing with Reuchlin is that he was the first of these Renaissance esotericists who actually kind of liked Jews. like he was against burning burning them and their books. He was like, well, maybe we should stick to just debating them. Maybe we shouldn't burn their holy texts and whatnot, which is a project and an attitude that you can see carried forward pretty obviously, in our boy Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. He knew what he was talking about, but I figure a lot of contemporary Jewish Kabbalists were like, well, yeah, they were reading his shit. They didn't care. Like, why would they give a shit what some Christian is like? I don't want to read Latin Kabbalah. That goes against the whole point. Like, a central concept in Kabbalah is the fact that, like, the Hebrew language is the one that is closest to God. It is what God spoke the world into being with. So they're like, why do I fucking care what this Christian has to say? I'm not reading this shit. Unless you're a converso who's like kind of a pervert for that sort of thing. But there's I haven't seen very many. Actually, that's not true. Okay. I don't know how popular Reuchlin was. I know that he's regarded as an important figure now, but I'm not sure how true that was for like the 1500s. I found a 1521 woodcut portraying Reuchlin as a soyjack and Pfefferkorn as the Shad. Yup. Owned. Yeah, the bar was on... It's like... It's the bar was on the ground, but it's important to have a guy to... A guy... Like... You gotta understand, being even seen as pro-Jewish, as a Christian, at this point in history, like... The Inquisition could kill you for that. It was genuinely a brave and dangerous thing to be like, maybe we shouldn't burn... copies of the Torah. Like that's a fairly radical position for the time, and one that is significantly pro-Jewish. Again, something we see carried forward into Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. And there's when you're this especially Pico and Reuchlin, like these are two of the founding figures of like Western esotericism. They're considered like part of the reason that you skip over the medieval era a little bit is that it's partially because guys like Pico and Reuchlin were summarizing everything that came before them, right? Where is Excalibur? There we go. Okay. Like, is that they're summarizing basically everything that came before them, right? Let's do a spy mission. Wait, nope. That said it had 18 seconds left. I don't want to do that. Hi, Umbra. So, okay. Like, once you get past the Enlightenment and into, like, the Victorian era, like the Victorian era esotericists, and you've got the Hermetic Kabbalah with a Q, all of those guys were reading Pico and Reuchlin, right? That's where all of that shit was coming from. So even by contemporary terms, Reuchlin and Pico were extremely important figures. Pico's also definitely one of the big inspirations for Elden Ring. Like, so much of Elden Ring is just like how Pico saw the world. Like the whole concept of the Elden Ring probably comes from the concept of De Verbo Mirifico, right? Like the idea of enshrining Christ as the Hebrew letter Shen into the Pentagrammaton, and that like being a representation of reality in some way. Like, oh, it's different now. Pico could dodge roll. That's true. I don't know how to do this fucking vault. Fuck. Whatever. Hang on. It is cool as fuck. Like, so much of that shit is cool as fuck. Hello? What's going on? Oh, damn it. There we go. So, that's basically where we've got, like, there's your overview of the Renaissance, right? The other thing with, like, this period of occult history is that, like, this is the point where, like, the term appropriation comes up quite a bit. And this is one of the few times in history where that is actually an appropriate term. Like, Pico was saying shit like, we need to take their theology and turn it into, theological weapons that we can use against the Jews. Like wiggling his fingers evilly and anti-Semitically about that. Like, actively taking someone's theology and, like, literally weaponizing it against them of, like, we're gonna have a debate based on your theology, and if you lose, we're gonna throw you in prison, right? That type of shit. But, like, Reuchlin was not appropriating anything, right? Pico was actively, like, trying to use shit as a weapon against Jews, like, actively trying to use Jewish theology against Jews. Reuchlin was not doing that. He was literally just studying Judaism. And so I think it's very easy to overstate the appropriatedness of Kabbalah within Western esotericism. It also misrepresents its role, like, in broader Judaism, because, like, when the Zohar came out, like, I hate using this term, but Jewry at large, like, in the term of, like, Christendom at large, were kind of so-so on the Zohar. Like, even today, only about 30% of rabbis are like, yeah, this is valuable and it should be part of Judaism. At most rabbis are like, it's interesting, it's mostly nonsense. And that was also true for the Renaissance, right? That was also true for the Renaissance, and so this is another reason why Pico and Reuchlin, like, learning about Kabbalah was, like, especially weird. Like, even most of the Jews didn't care about this shit. So there would be debates where they're, like, using Kabbalistic arguments to, like, try and prove the supremacy of Christianity. And it's like, they're not even doing Kabbalah correctly, and the rabbi they're arguing with is like, that shit isn't real. What are you talking about? Like, shut up. Because the other thing is that, like, you have to be 40 and have a beard. We don't want another Shabbatites v situation. Yup. Did these schemes ever work? Were any of these Jews convinced? Okay. Yes, but under duress. Like, you gotta remember that they were, like, these quote-unquote debates, it was like, okay, the rabbis definitely won a lot of these arguments, but they were like, all right, so you didn't really convince the papal authority, but also, like, convert to Christianity or we're just gonna fucking kill you, dog. So the Christian authorities get to say, yes, awesome, another W for us, even though they, like, internally are like, we got owned. We got fucking owned. We got owned and there's no coming back from this. Being a rabbi who's bad at arguing, who sounds like the most masochistic thing you could do. Yeah, exactly. But also, it's like, these quote-unquote debates were, like, largely... It's like a show trial type thing. Like, it's... In my opinion, I think internally it was a lot of the Christian authorities at the time trying to prove to themselves that this was possible. Like, there was a desire to prove that Christianity was not just... Like, there was a desire to prove that Christianity was a logical thing. That, like, it was simply correct. It was, like, logically correct in a way that Judaism and Islam wasn't. And... Also, this was not widespread. Like, people trying to have theological debates like this was not a huge thing. There's evidence from the reactions to Pico's 900 Theses that, like, this entire project was seen as cringe, of, like, even debating the Jews was seen as like giving them too much credit, and that most people were just like, let's just kill them and take their shit. Like, why are we even humoring this? Come on, log on, bitch. The Disputation of Barcelona is like the one example of a theological debate where the king is like, okay, the Jews win. Yeah, no, it's like, it definitely happened. And that's the only... It definitely happened, but this also wasn't like a massive L for Christianity, because they still like owned the Holy Roman Empire and were just like, okay, we're kicking you all out. Yeah, debating people does legitimize their views. And so, like, that's... But it was also, like, the sheer brutality towards Jews was definitely seen as, like, a little much for the time among some Christians. I don't know how prominent that view was, but it's clear that over time there was, like... There was definitely a reaction to it of, like, hey, we should maybe chill. But obviously the clerical authorities had a vested interest in, like, continuing this pogrom. Yeah, it happened with, like, Muslims all over the place as well. Yeah, the real debate within Christianity was, like, people who wanted to convert them and people who wanted to kill them. And so, on top of all of this, you've got, like, this is where esotericism of the period thrives, is you've got all of these very intense, like, niche theological debates. Yes, Wiggler Lesbian, I play Warframe. I've been doing it every Friday for the last couple months. Okay, Joey Jojo, you keep calling him Pfefferkorn. Why do you keep calling him, like I know him as Reuchlin. Why do you keep calling him Pfefferkorn? IDK, how far you are into it? I've done all the story shit. Oh, Pfefferkorn is the guy that Reuchlin debated. Yes. Like, my current goal in Warframe is to get all the frames. My quest for all toys. Well, Pfefferkorn literally does mean peppercorn, so it's like I can imagine like a pastry with pepper in it.
Always a pleasure. That's all for me.
My delicious pepper pastry. So that's basically the core of Renaissance esotericism, right? I love that you went to New Loka because they're like a cult. Well, they're also like eco-fascists. I specifically went to them because I wanted to try out the... they had like... I forget why, actually. There was a reason I picked them. There was some mod I wanted. Okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Puzzles in Deviri, hack consoles, missions. Okay. I want to find spy missions. Let's do some spy missions. Switching around syndicates for a while, and I hated siding with New Loka. So happy to be aligned with Steel Meridian again. I'm trying to, like, buy out all of the syndicates just to, like, get all their shit. Ugh. It takes a long time to build syndicate standing, though. It takes quite a bit. Let me in! Let me in! Ugh. The other thing with Pico is that he was very much like, he saw magic and like the concept of all this Christian esotericism in a similar way that Moshe de Leon did, where he's like, this is it. This is what can, like, mend the rift, is like we can mine all of this weird esoterica for things that can potentially solve all the problems that Christianity is undergoing right now. But he also saw like the medieval magical milieu. Like he saw the grimoire tradition as like kind of primitive. He saw it as like something to be transcended. Like we can do better than just like invoking angels and drawing circles on the ground. And so he's like the first guy to learn about, he's the first white guy to learn about Kabbalah and go like, this is it. This is the ultimate magic that can solve everything. Like I literally think Pico is where that comes from. Because that's how he talks about Kabbalah, as it like these concepts, this like exegetical technique as being the ultimate form of esotericism. But also it's like he's not wrong, right? Judaism is one of the like underlying strata of Western culture in general. Like it's Western religion especially, right? And Kabbalah is a set of tools for just wringing as much meaning as you possibly can out of it. And a lot of Kabbalah is based on like Greco-Arabic shit. That's the other thing with people talking about like appropriation in Kabbalah is that even Kabbalah is not authentically Jewish. Like, because authentically anything doesn't actually exist, right? Moshe DeLeon was also there in the Convivencia. He was reading shit from like Christians and Muslims. Like a lot of the stuff in Kabbalah is actually based on Arabic esoterica from the late Umayyad Caliphate. Like the whole concept, like many of the concepts from Kabbalah about the textual exegesis of like assigning specific spiritual meanings to Hebrew letters, that comes from shit that Arabic scholars were doing with Arabic. It's remixes all the way down, and all of them were stealing from the Greeks, who were themselves stealing from Jews. Everyone is stealing from everyone else. That said, there are definitely parts of Kabbalah that are like I said, or not Kabbalah, Christian Kabbalah, that are like, yes, we can use this to prove the ultimate supremacy of Christianity. Yes. And obviously that shit's lame. That attitude it shows up in Blavatsky sometimes. Does the Quran have its own tradition comparable? Oh yes, Ariel Shadowcat. Oh yes, it does. It's not quite Kabbalah. It's like there's a lot of different Arabic traditions that are kind of like Kabbalah, but the reason that Kabbalah had so much sauce is that it was kind of all of them in one place, right? It was taking all this Sufist esotericism and reapplying it to Judaism with a heavy coat of Neoplatonist paint. The other thing with like Arabic and Islamic esotericism is that it's very diverse, like very, very, very diverse. Like I have not even begun to approach the sheer diversity of Islamic esotericism. There's so much of it. I've always thought of Sufism as closer to the Orthodox hesychasm tradition rather than getting really into it with like word math. The word math definitely came later, right? That was like, I think the word math shit only showed up because the Umayyad Caliphate like conquered a lot of North Africa and was a little more influenced by the remnants of like Neoplatonist esotericism. But I have no evidence for that, so don't quote me there. Sufism is also very diverse. There's a lot of different like forms of Sufist mysticism. The other interesting thing with Sufism is that it's like, and the Islamic world at large, is that like magic is much more banned in the Islamic world than it is otherwise. So a lot of their esotericism manifests as like Quranic commentaries and like investigations into the Quran, which I think Moshe DeLeon was reading a lot of that shit. And because those are all ideas that apply very well to Judaism, right? Honestly, it was problematic of him to to appropriate Islamic esotericism like that. Shaving my finger at him. The other thing with Moshe DeLeon is that he was like, he basically said in our episode on our discussion of early Jewish esotericism, there are references to like, you know, the Book of Enoch being a remnant of this spoken tradition, this spoken Torah, that was never written down. When Moshe DeLeon wrote the Zohar, he said the Zohar is that. Like, Zohar is this secret, unwritten esotericism that came directly from Moses, and I'm just the guy who like found it and organized it. And basically everyone at the time was like, Moshe, we know you're lying, but this shit's cool. Did Islam have someone trying to do similar things in like a let's make a perfect theology that we can convert the heathens? I'm sure that happened. I don't know enough about Islamic history to say for sure, but I'm almost positive that happened, because that's one of the major attitudes that went into the foundation of Islam itself, was like this very like egalitarian, like let's combine everyone under one theology. Like the Quran makes a lot of room for Christians and Jews, and like it basically says that they should be treated as other people of the book, you know. I do a spy mission. I don't know, whatever. We'll get back to that. I need to kill more people with my necromech. Let's go to Deimos. Also because Arabic and Hebrew are much closer to the yeah, Arabic and Hebrew are like very similar languages. And the Sabians. Me at any time ever. Words and numbers is the magic of the divine bureaucracy. It works, don't it? Like, people came up with the idea of like the divine bureaucracy as being fundamentally made of language, and that's just part of Western esotericism now. It works. Don't knock what ain't fixed or what ain't broke. I don't know. Do whatever you want. Yay! I love Deimos bounties. Once saw a claimed retelling of a debate between a Christian and Muslim scholars organized by Saladin. There are so many stories that are like apocryphal tales of debates between Christians and Muslims and Jews or whatever. A lot of them are genuinely hilarious. Don't hit it if you ain't fixed. If you ain't neutered, I don't know ya. One of these days I will learn more about Islamic esotericism. Don't hit it if you can't fit. Don't hit it if you ain't fixed is pretty damn good. I like that. This general era was also pretty seriously defined by a, what do you want to call it? Like a, another tradition of, let's say, like dictionary making, which I think is one of the things that Lul contributed to this era, although he's a little earlier than all this, if I recall correctly. Somebody look up when Lul was born, please. But it's like, okay, you've got all of this pagan philosophy being brought back. Everyone wants, it's like, all right, now we're retranslating everything. We're going back to the sources. We're doing our good old Renaissance ad fontes. We got to write all this down in one place. So everyone and their mother was making damn dictionaries. And this is where we get Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, right? Because that's basically what the 3 books of occult philosophy is. He went through history, like, just found every book that he could read, and was like, let's just find every mention of magic ever, and then write it all down in one book, and then try to, like, build a unified theory of magic. And a lot of what he was reading was shit like Reuchlin and Pico. Although, he was Agrippa was a much more careful writer than Pico and Reuchlin were. Like, 1235. Yeah, he was much earlier, right? A solid 200 years on these other guys. So the thing with Pico is that he was very flashy as a writer. He was like, I've done it, everyone. I've found the correct way to do Christianity. I'm going to show my findings to the damn Pope. My favorite apocryphal story. Yes, the Jewish Kazakhs. Or Khazars. No, that shit rules. It's such, like, another one of those apocryphal stories that, like, every theology pervert is like, but what if? What if the one true religion is Judeo-Tengri? It can happen. We can make it happen. So Pico was like, I've done it. I found the one way to do religion correctly. Let's go tell the Pope. And the Pope was like, cool story, bro. We're actually gonna ban your book. Pico's, like, I forget which book of it was of Pico's, but, like, one of his books was, like, one of the first books ever banned by the Catholic Church. Yeah, the one that's like, he took out his lunch, so I took out my lunch. Rip Pico. So he was very, let's call it bold about his about his ideas. And the thing with Agrippa is that he's a much more careful writer. He's much more careful about, like, using joking, not joking language. He's a very funny writer. He masks a lot of his positions with humor, but he is very careful to couch all of his opinions within their applications to Christianity. And this is largely just to protect, this is largely to keep him from getting, like, captured and tortured. And unfortunately, he was captured and tortured to death for being too pro-Jewish. It is why I like, it's like, he was woke and funny. That's why I like him. Like, how many Christian esotericists got, like, tortured to death by the Catholic Church for being too pro-Jewish? That's a dope way to die for a wizard, right? Yeah, he was a podcaster. He was woke and funny. And so, okay, one of the other reasons why you can, like, kind of skip a lot of the medieval era is that, like, you just fucking read read the 3 books of occult philosophy. It's a dictionary of, like, every mention of magic up to that point. Unless you're, like, really interested in Christian Apocrypha, which, let's face it, is super fucking interesting. You don't even really need a lot of that stuff. You can start with Agrippa, get some background, read De Verbo Malefico. Don't try to read the Zohar. You're not going to be able to read the Zohar. It's a literally untranslatable text. You listen to lectures from Jewish academics talking about Kabbalah. Actually trying to read Kabbalistic texts is, like, literally impossible. The damn Zohar isn't even written in Hebrew. It's written in a unique dialect of Aramaic that was invented specifically for the Zohar. It's literally untranslatable. Like, whenever this is another one of my gripes when people talk about people appropriating Kabbalah. It's like, are they actually, it's like, to say that people are appropriating Kabbalah is to imply that they are actually doing Kabbalah, which is very, very difficult. Like, by basically any authentic Jewish definition of Kabbalah, none of the Renaissance esotericists were actually studying Kabbalah. They were studying a shadow of Kabbalah. Reminds me, you gotta finish Defining Magic a Reader. That's a good book. Highly recommend it. Like, a lot of these guys didn't have beards. Plato's Allegory of Kabbalah. Yeah, literally. No, that's a lot of it. Also, Moshe DeLeon fucking, like, he was clearly reading a lot of, like, Islamic esoterica. He fucking hated Muslims and Christians. Like, he was also very racist. It's a little more understandable towards Christians because of the Alhambra degree stuff, but he also did not like Muslims. It's a lot of esoteric history is like generally racist people stealing from other things that they are racist towards. But also like, welcome to human civilization, you know? It is interesting to see like how many concepts from Kabbalah and earlier Jewish mysticism that get like laundered into other shit, like kind of unintentionally, even without really noticing. It also shows to Goya how cool Kabbalah is, that it, like, keeps trying to be reappropriated by racists. Islam is killing it. Like, the idea that it's, like, not part of Western culture is just, like, wrong. They keep winning. We keep handing them W's. Let's see. So, after, like... Because, like, after Agrippa, you've got, like, the lead up to the Renaissance. Or, not the lead up to the Renaissance. The lead up to the Enlightenment, which is kind of, like, a hard stop. Oh, yeah, the other thing with fucking, Pico is that the 900 Theses are kind of, like, the manifesto of the Renaissance. Like, they are one of the first, like... Even though he was a diehard Christian, it's very critical of the church in a lot of specific, like, hair-splitting ways that can be difficult to discern at first glance. In the same way that, like Boethius was kind of the first guy to write a manifesto for the medieval era. Like, he's kind of, like, what the fuck was Boethius's book called? I don't know. But, like, his writing, like, the publishing of his book and his death is kind of, like, the start of the medieval era, if you want to find a guy. Like, you can kind of say the same for Pico as, like, the 900 Theses being, like, the first real Renaissance text. Consolation of Philosophy. Thank you, Blessed Feline. That's a lot of theses. They're very short. Why choose anything other than the venerable institution of Zoroastrianism? Well, fucking, I mean, that's where, like, modern Judaism and Christianity came from. It was, like, apocalyptic Jews trying to incorporate, like, a little bit of Zoroastrian shit into them. It's, like, kind of formed the basis of, especially modern Christianity. Or, like, sorry, not modern Christianity, like, Christianity of the time. Early Christianity. I actually know more Zoroastrians than you'd expect, which is 2. That's impressive. There aren't very many of them. Because, like, most Zoroastrian... Like, it very quickly got absorbed into Islam. And so a lot of the only Zoroastrian temples left are, like... It's, like, weird fire temples that were, like, extremely far east. They're in, like, India and shit. And so the surviving version of Zoroastrianism that we have is like a weird fringe version of it that was probably not representative of what it was actually like back in the ancient world, which is really interesting. Yeah, they're still around, but it's like a weird version of them. Shit's cool. I'm glad that they're still around. Well, I have my drifter in like a full body costume because the face animations in this game are a little wonky. I still have like a randomly generated character that I'm just like, this is fine. I'll just use this. One interesting thing from reading the Gospels is that when people talk about demonic possession, the same valence as Muslims talk about catching jinn or something. It's not quite value neutral, but it's understood as a lot less dramatic than in modern Christianity. That's true, yeah. Well, obviously Christ has power over demons, so like, why would you be scared if you believe in Christ, right? Honestly, the Protestants are way more scared of demons than the Catholics are. Penis. Hi, Riley. Hey, Riley, if you're around, we're talking about Renaissance esotericism if you want to jump in COCOM. Probably going to be here for another hour and change. You know, recently I've been interested in, like, Christian mythology. Like, that French novel series about, like, giants that built an abbey. You just woke up? No pressure, no pressure. I love shit like that. Or there's like this one bridge in Serbia where they're like, there's like an evil king who stole the sun, and then like Saint John had to like trick him into bringing it back. I love shit like that. Does Narnia count as Christian mythology? Absolutely. It's like allegory. Or actually, no. Aslan is literally Christ.
Hi, CT.
Hi, Riley. Good morning.
Speaking of Christian mythology, are you aware of the Golden Legend?
Yes, that sounds familiar. Refresh me.
The Golden Legend is a book that nearly outsold the Bible during the Middle Ages. It's the catalog of all the saints' stories and myths.
Yes.
A lot of previous cultural myths were folded, but it's awesome. You check it out. It's like their Marvel Cinematic Universe.
That's true. That's true. No, that's like honestly, medieval history is like probably one of my weaker periods, historically speaking. So I've been wanting to learn more about medieval shit. Oh yeah, Calvino does have that like Italian fairy tale thing.
Of the Golden Legend.
Sorry, say that again.
Translated by William Granger Ryan, and like they have a bunch of like litanies and stuff in here, but also like you can read about fucking Saint Sebastian and Saint Cyprian and all those folks.
I do like Saint Cyprian. I like it when saints are just like also wizards.
They say that he had viper venom leaking out of his butt in a cemetery.
Yeah, that type of shit happens all the time to me.
Many such cases. Anyway, I did just wake up, so how's it going here?
We're going good. We've only been live for about an hour. We were talking about fucking, we were talking about Pico della Mirandola and the Renaissance esotericists, like Christian Cobble and whatnot. They're fun, aren't they?
Did you use that book? Was it Celestial Intelligences, the Anathema book on Pico?
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. I haven't read it, though.
Oh my god, CT, it's in paperback now. So you can't get the cool version that I have, but this is like your shit, like 100%.
That's cool. That sounds good. I'll have to read that.
Yeah, I think it's the same. Who wrote this one? Oh, Greg Kaminsky. Okay.
I need to read more about Giordano Bruno. He has some interesting shit, but a lot of his writing is... I find a lot of his writing kind of annoying.
The anarchists in the Spanish Civil War had like hymns to Giordano Bruno because they viewed him as like an Enlightenment and anti-clerical figure.
Because he kind of was. But a lot of his writing is, like, about how smart he is, which I'm like, all right, stay humble, buddy. I know that the Catholic Church put you in prison, but stay humble. Lock in.
I'm so tempted to just read the table of contents from this Pico book, but I'm just going to take a picture and send it to you so that you get your...
Oh, was he just like that because he was Italian? That makes sense. I believe that.
They're all like that.
Well, that's what Pico was like. He was just like, I finally figured out how to do religion correctly. I need to tell the Pope and debate him. And then the Pope was like, we're banning everything you've ever written.
This is just... He's having the average Exmo experience.
Would you say that the average ex-Mormon experience is particularly conducive to an interest in the occult?
No. Most of them end up as just normal Disney adults.
Hmm.
I think that it's more likely, like you know, you're gonna get more occultist Exmos and you're gonna get occultist ex-Lutherans, probably.
Yes.
But I don't think it's an inevitability or any such thing.
You don't.
But you were talking about Christian mythology, and there's okay, the places you find those are like A, the Golden Legend, and B, the Books of Hours. Actually, there's like a whole bunch of like
yeah.
book mythology in the Books of Hours. I've sent you that Hours of Catherine of Cleves thing, where
Yeah, that shit's cool.
there's the series where uh, Seth finds Adam is dying, and he like goes back to the Garden of Eden, and at the gate, an angel gives him a shoot from the Tree of Life, and Adam still dies, but Seth plants the shoot in his mouth, and out of that skull of Adam grows this tree, and it gets chopped down, and then it gets used in all sorts of ways, like for Bathsheba to ford this river or whatever, and then eventually it ends up like in this pool where people are, because it's magic, it's like got these waters that are healing people, and everyone's using it, and then they fish the log out of the pool and use it to make the cross that kills Jesus, and like it's awesome. I gotta take pictures of this thing for you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, that shit's so cool. But also, it's
but,
like that also reminds me of
background, they'll just
Oh, go
include
ahead.
some of the craziest like myths that have a huge theological bearing on stuff. It's also like what? Go
Still
ahead.
there.
Don't worry.
Riley.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It reminds me of like all the like the like mystical courtly literature that motherfuckers like Mechthild of Magdeburg were writing. Oh, this is my friend Riley, also a fellow occultist.
As in like Grail court mythology or different court like mythos?
Well, okay, Mechthild of Magdeburg was writing shit. It wasn't like Grail mythology, but it was like what do you call it? It was like courtly love poetry, where it's like common tropes of the time were like having a lowly knight yearning for a princess who was above his social station. So it's like he loved her, but they can never be together. And then Mechthild of Magdeburg was like, that's just like me and Christ. Fuck, it's eternal yearning.
Oh yeah.
Which like that's
it was seen as like a noble thing for like guys to be in love with like a princess who could never ever touch them.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like the Middle Ages version of wearing a cage.
It was. Well, it's like I I think
It's
Mechthild
good for
kind of
your soul.
Mechthild hit something like that, where it's like that kind of is the essence of Christianity, of like eternally yearning for Christ, but never like being able to consummate that, like a sort of metaphysical divine edging. Like that's it. That's it. But it, like she understands that like the nature of Christianity is very erotic.
The longing is the grace.
It is. Well,
I'm always saying this. I'm always telling people the longing is the grace, and they don't believe me.
and fucking like when she was writing her mystical poetry shit, she was like Mechthild would like cast herself as the knight yearning for a beautiful lady that was Christ. Like she would femalize Christ. She
A
would force him Christ.
lesbian. Every
Yeah.
nun is gay
Every nun is
and
gay.
holy.
And she would write about Christ as being a woman, which is dope. And also like very radical for the time. Like you can't really do that. I don't know if she was making a political statement with that, but it's certainly a statement.
Christ was a woman.
That's true. There's
Longinus did SRS to Jesus on the cross.
That's what was in the spear.
Yeah, it's pussy, babe.
That's pussy, babe. Why are you bleeding out? This is like the
Speaking of books of hours, though, they are drawing Jesus so white in Middle Ages Germany.
Yup.
No, they didn't have a lot of reference, but like, come on, y'all.
Right. It's like you know he's from the Levant, man. Y'all knew that.
I think they also were kind of hoping for like a British Israelism sort of thing to be proven or something.
Every fucking like large Christian hegemon is like low key doing that. Like that just keeps happening all throughout history. They're like, what if we're the real Jews?
Look, and if it wasn't that, it would be like, actually, we're from Troy.
Right.
We were actually on the Orgo.
Yeah. They were Turkish.
Like there would be like some sort of irredentist, not, yeah, I guess irredentism is as close a word as we're gonna get for like colonial ambitions, as like you portray your colonial target as your ancestral homeland or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And also just like saying that, like figuring out some way to say that you're in the Bible.
Yes, exactly. And it was a thing that like people did as like a creative writing exercise, or you know, even into like the like Renaissance era. Like you've got like these Scandinavian people being like, actually, the Norse were in the Bible. They were this tribe, and also they were from Troy, and you can find them in Homer.
Yup. Everyone likes to say that anyone north of the Mediterranean is like, we were the Hyperboreans. We're in Plato.
Yeah. Apollo actually came to visit us during the winter time when Dionysus took over.
And that's where we learned all of this stuff. There's a
Yeah.
guy who did that for being Dutch. Like, that's like that's the funniest.
That would be the funniest thing is like Apollo giving the gift of divine prophecy to the Dutch.
Right, right. the biblical Brabants. That shit's so funny to me.
I imagine like a solar disk as like a stroopwafel
Apollo came to rest his chariot in Amsterdam.
Stroopwafel Eucharist?
That sounds tasty, actually.
I would go to that church. Dutch Apollo is the first theory disproved by nobody taking it seriously.
Yup.
Thank you. Chimera era undying. Oh, Chima era. Wait, Chimera undying.
I just call them Chimera.
It's Chimera.
You're a Chimera now. Yup.
Yep.
Yup. Yup.
This turned you into Chimera.
Yup. There is no solving this. This problem will continue forever.
Yeah. So this collection of the Golden Legend that I have is awesome. Do you have a saint?
Do I have a
any
saint?
any of them? Yeah, any of them. Give me
I
a
like
saint.
Saint Christopher. What's up with Saint Christopher?
Okay.
I like that
Let's
he's
find
the
him in here.
I like that he's the patron saint of travelers.
Ooh, they have the story of Jesus' circumcision in here.
Oh, hell yeah. I hope that went well for him. Saint Christopher is the furry one?
I bet he
No.
had the best circumcision ever.
Yeah,
Saint
no, it has
Christopher,
to be the best one.
Christopher.
Is Saint Christopher I thought... No.
We're about to find out. There's a lot of saints, so I'm going through them. They're not alphabetized in here.
Oh.
Oh, he's in page 10 of volume 2. Okay. Man, I just saw the word servitor in the St. Christopher section.
Cool.
Do you want to read 5 pages about St. Christopher in here? We'll tell the
Sure.
story of St. Christopher. This is what Christians in the Middle Ages were reading to get their St. Christopher knowledge, their lore.
Yeah, tell us about Saint Christopher.
Okay. Before St. Christopher was baptized, he was called Reprobus, meaning outcast. But afterwards, he was called Christophoros, the Christ-bearer. He bore Christ in 4 ways: on his shoulders when he carried him across the river, in his body by mortification, in his mind by devotion, and in his mouth by confessing Christ and preaching him. Christopher was a Canaanite by birth, a man of prodigious size. He was 12 feet tall and fearsome of visage.
Anunnaki!
I love that so much. Yeah,
He's a Nephilim!
Canaanite. He's definitely an alien. This rules. I would love to write these in the Middle Ages and just lie to like peasants.
Yes! Thank you for
According to
reminding
some
me about the
accounts,
Golden
like,
Legend. I've
it
been
happened
itching
one
for some
day.
weird, like, Christian, like, mythology shit.
When he was in the presence of a certain Canaanite king, that the idea came to him of going in quest of the greatest prince in the world and staying with him. It's kind of gay.
Yeah.
He came to a mighty king who was regarded generally as the world's greatest ruler. When this king saw Christopher, he received him gladly and made him a member of his court. Then one day the court jester sang some ditty before the king, in which frequent mention was made of the devil. The king was a Christian and made the sign of the cross on his forehead when he heard the devil spoken of. Christopher noticed this and wondered why the king did it, and what the sign meant. He asked the king about it, and when the ruler did not answer him, said unto him, "Unless you answer my question, I will not stay with you any longer." The king, thus pressed, told him, "Whenever I hear the devil mentioned, I defend myself with this sign, for fear the devil might get some power over me and do me harm." Christopher said, If you're afraid of being harmed by the devil, this proves that he is greater and more powerful than you are. or you wouldn't be afraid of him. Therefore, I am frustrated in my hope that I had found the greatest and most powerful lord in the world. So now farewell. I'll go and look for the devil and accept him as my master and become his servant. This guy rules.
That's awesome.
12 feet tall. He's gonna go find the strongest guy. He's like a minion, you know, like looking for the strongest, most evil.
Yeah. St. Christopher's actually a minion.
Yeah. Christopher left that king and went in search of the devil. He was going through a desert when he saw a great host of soldiers. One of them, fiercer and more terrible than the rest, came to him and asked where he was going. Christopher answered, I'm looking for the Lord Devil. I want to take him as my master. The other said to him, I'm
You
the
can
one
meet
you're
this guy at the average hardcore show.
Yes! Looking for the devil. I'm that guy. I'm the tallest person at the show.
He's just
Looking
like me
the
for
devil.
real.
Okay. The other said to him, I'm the one you're looking for. Christopher was happy to hear this and pledged himself to serve him forever, acknowledging him as his lord and master. They marched along the highway until they came to a cross erected at the roadside. When the devil saw it, he was terror-stricken, left the road, and led Christopher over a wild and desolate tracts before returning to the road. Christopher was surprised by this and asked the devil what made him so afraid that he left the high road and took another way through the rough wilderness. The devil refused to state his reason, and Christopher said, Unless you tell me what this is about, I shall leave you immediately. The demon, no longer able to evade the question, said, There was a man named Christ who was nailed to a cross, and when I see the sign of his cross, I am filled with terror and run away. Christopher said, Well then, this Christ, whose sign you dread so much, is greater and more powerful than you are. Therefore I've labored in vain, and have not yet found the greatest prince in the world. So goodbye to you. I'm leaving you and going in search of Christ. He looked long and far for someone who could give him word of Christ. Finally, he came upon a hermit who preached Christ to him and instructed him diligently in Christian faith. He said to Christopher, The king whom you wish to serve requires that you do you do his will in many ways. For instance, you will have to fast frequently. Christopher said, Let him require some other form of obedience. That one I just can't do. Again, the hermit. You will also have to offer him prayers. Christopher, I don't even know what that means, so I can't perform
What is that?
service. What's a prayer? The hermit then asked him, Do you know the famous river where many people trying to cross go under and perish? Yes, I do, said Christopher. The hermit, You're big enough and strong enough. Go dwell by the river, and if you help those who wish to cross it, that will greatly please Christ the King whom you wish to serve. And I hope that it, and I hope it, sorry, I was rereading the wrong line. And I hope he might show himself to you there. Christopher, good, that kind of service I can give, and I can promise him to serve him that way. He went to the river and built himself a shelter to live in. Instead of a staff, he used a long pole to steady himself in the water, and carried across all those who wished to go. Many days later, he was resting in his shelter when he heard a child's voice calling him. Christopher, come out and carry me across. He jumped to his feet and went out, but found no one. He went indoors again and heard the same voice calling him, but ran out again and saw no one. The third time, he responded to the same call and found a child standing on the riverbank. The child begged him to carry him across the water, and Christopher lifted him to his shoulders, grasped his great staff, and strode into the water. But little by little, the water grew rougher, and the child became as heavy as lead. The farther
Fuck.
he went, the higher rose the waves, and the weight of the child pressed down upon his shoulders so crushingly that he was in dire distress. He feared that he was about to founder, but at last he reached the other bank. Setting the child down, he said to him, My boy, you put me in great danger. You weighed so much that if I had the whole world on my back, I could have not felt it a heavier burden. The child answered him, "Don't be surprised, Christopher. You were not only carrying the whole world, you had him who created the world upon your shoulders. I am Christ your King, to whom you render service by doing the work you do here. And if you want proof that what I'm saying is true, when you get back to your little house, plant your staff in the earth, and tomorrow you will find it in leaf and bearing fruit." With that, the child vanished. Christopher crossed over and thrust his staff into the earth near his shelter. The next morning he rose and found the staff bearing leaves and fruit like a palm tree.
Cool.
Um, there's more to the Christopher story if you want to continue. There's like 2 more pages of this. We've read 2 so far. But you know
What do you
what?
think, chat? Do you want to hear the rest of the tale of St. Christopher? I'll let chat decide.
Okay, that's a good. Yeah, we've got the. Okay, one of them says yes. One says sure.
Give it a sec. Give it a sec.
Sorry. Yeah, people have to type.
Looks like people want more hagiography. So if you would care to continue reading, Riley,
I do love a good hagiography.
these are fun.
People don't get it. People don't get why I'm obsessed with religion, and I'm like, have you read this shit? It's fucking awesome.
It's
Like,
cool. There's wizards and shit.
and even when it's not cool, you're like, okay, like I get why they're like that now.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the kind of shit you read to your child if you can read.
Right, dude. This is what I'm reading to my noble whelps.
My noble whelps, come, gather. I have a tale.
Literally.
After that, Christopher went to Samos, a city in Lycia. He did not understand the language spoken there, and prayed the Lord to make him able to understand it. As he prayed, the judges thought he was insane and left him alone. But when the favor he had prayed for was granted, he covered his face and went to the place where Christians were being tortured and executed to speak to them and give them courage in the Lord. One of the judges struck him in the face, and Christopher, uncovering his face, said, "If I were not a Christian, I would quickly have revenge for this insult." Then he planted his staff in the earth and prayed the Lord that it might burst into leaf and thus help convert the people. Leaves sprouted instantly, and 8,000 men believed and became Christians.
Wow. He counted
That's
them all
awesome.
too.
Great job. Yeah. The king now sent 200 soldiers to bring Christopher to him, but they found him at prayer and were afraid to tell him why they had come. The king sent as many more, but they, when they found him praying, prayed with him. Christopher rose and said to them, "For whom are you looking?" Seeing his face, they said, "The king sent us to bring you to him in bonds." Christopher said, "If I did not wish to go, you could not take me, bound or not." They said, "Well then, if you don't want to come, take your leave and go, wherever you wish, and we'll tell the king we could not find you anywhere." "Not so," he replied. "I'll go with you." So Christopher converted the soldiers to the faith, had them tie his hands behind his back, and present him thus bound to the king. The sight of him terrified the king, who fell from his seat. His servitors raised him, and he asked Christopher his name and country of origin. Christopher replied, "Before baptism I was called Reprobus, and now I am called Christopher." The king said, "You have taken a foolish name, calling yourself after Christ, who was crucified and could do nothing to save himself, and now can do nothing for you. Now then, you trouble-making Canaanite, why do you not sacrifice to our gods?" Christopher said, "You are rightly called Dagnus, because you are the death of the world and the devil's partner, and your gods are the work of men's hands." The king said, "You were brought up among wild beasts, and you can only
Owned.
do the works of savages, and talk of things unknown to men. Now, however, if you are ready to sacrifice, I will bestow great honors upon you. If not, you will be tortured to death.
Yay!
Christopher refused to sacrifice, and the king put him in jail. As for the soldiers whom he had sent after Christopher, he had them beheaded for the name of Christ.
Cool.
Wow.
This dude
Now
sounds
the
like an
king
asshole.
had two shapely young women, one named Nicaea and the other Aquilina, put into the cell with Christopher. Oh, he gave him wenches,
Oh.
promising them large rewards if they succeeded in seducing him. This king is offering him great hospitality. I don't know what's going on. He beheads his own soldiers, and then it's like, "Hey, Christopher, you want some fuck?"
You want some fuck? We have 2
Uh,
wenches just for you.
Christopher quickly saw through the stratagem and knelt to pray. When the women tried to arouse him by stroking him and putting their arms around him, he stood up and said to them, "What are you trying to do, and for what reason were you sent here?" The two were frightened by the radiance of his face and said, "Saint of God, pity us. Make us able to believe in the God whom you preach." Uh, word of this reached the king, who had the women brought to him, and said, "So you too have been seduced. I swear by the gods that unless you sacrifice to the gods, you will die an awful death." They answered, "If your will is that we offer sacrifice, have the streets cleared and order all the people into the temple." This done, they went into the temple, loosened their girdles, and threw them around the necks of the idols, pulling them to the ground and reducing them to dust.
Fuck.
Then they said to the assistants, "Call your doctors and let them heal your gods." Ooh.
That's okay, kind of owned actually.
Yeah. I'm sorry, iconoclasm is bad because I like the statues, but also it is sick when people do that.
It is kind of a
Uh,
cool moment when the Christians own the statues.
by order of the king, Aquilina was then hung up by the wrists, and a huge stone was tied to her feet, thus breaking all her limbs. When she had breathed her last in the Lord, her sister Nicaea was thrown into the fire. But when she emerged unscathed, she was beheaded at once. Christopher was then brought before the king, who ordered him to be beaten with iron rods and to have an iron helmet heated in the fire placed on his head. Then he had an iron chair made. The saint was bound into it. Then a fire was lighted underneath and pitch thrown onto the flames.
Damn,
But the
they really
chair
wanted to fucking kill
crumbled
this
like
guy.
wax, and Christopher came away from it unharmed. Then the king had him lashed to a pillar and ordered 400 bowmen to shoot
Oh my
arrows at
god.
him. But the arrows hung in midair and not a single one could touch him. He's doing Neo shit, like in the Matrix.
Badass.
But when the king, thinking that he had been mortally wounded, came to mock him, suddenly one of the arrows came through the air, turned back, and struck the tyrant in the eye, blinding
Cool.
him. Christopher said to him, "Tyrant, I will be dead by tomorrow. Then make paste with my blood and rub it onto your eyes, and you will recover your sight." That's sick as hell.
That is
There's
badass.
there's all these eye poultices in like early Christianity as well, like these that are made from humans. Anyway, by the king's order, the saint was led to the place of execution, where, after praying, he was beheaded. The king took a little of his blood and rubbed it on his eyes, saying, "In the name of God and Saint Christopher," and his sight was restored immediately. Then he was baptized and issued a decree that whoever blasphemed against God or Saint Christopher was to be beheaded at once.
This dude loves beheading people.
Yeah.
He's like,
Ambrose, in his preface, says of this murder, "O Lord, you granted such a wealth of virtue and such grace of teaching to Christopher that by his gleaming miracles he recalled 48,000 men from the error of paganism to the cult of Christian dogma. Nicaea and Aquilina had been engaged in prostitution in the public brothel, but he won them over to the practice of chastity and schooled them to receive the crown of martyrdom. For this, he was strapped into an iron chair in the middle of a blazing fire, but
Wh-
feared no harm from the heat.
Why didn't the
For a whole
prostitutes
day,
get to
the
be
storm of
saints?
arrows shot by the soldiers could not pierce him. Yet one arrow struck the executioner's eye, and the blessed martyr's blood mixed with earth. It's always mixed with earth. Oh my god. Sorry, this is like some old cult shit.
Yup.
Yeah, like Lemnian earth, and then like a poultice from like Jesus was making the poultices out of his spit. This is the first time I've seen one made out of blood.
Right.
But like holy people making like eye salves out of their like bodily fluids is not uncommon, mixed with Lemnian earth too. Okay, not Lemnian earth, here it just says earth, but I don't know how this was translated. Mixed with earth restored his sight by removing the body's blindness, also illumined his mind. For the saint besought your forgiveness, by his supplications obtained the cure of diseases and infirmities.
Oh, that's
This
so
next
cool.
thing is called the Seven Sleepers.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. That was a good choice. I thank you for showing me telling me to look up Saint Christopher.
Yeah, yeah. He was always one of my favorite saints.
Yeah. What do you? Are there more things about Saint Christopher you know? Because I don't. This is my first exposure to him.
There was something with him involving being struck by lightning. Like someone in one of his stories was like eliminate like you know why like every D&D like cleric has a you get struck by lightning spell that's called smite? It's because of some mythology around Saint Christopher where someone gets smoted.
It's surprising to me also like how pagan all of this shit is, even when they're like, we defeated the pagans, but like they're using the signs and symbols of like pagan cult to kind of win people over
Right.
to these states. It's fascinating. This
It's
is
so interesting.
This is like how they like turned different like folk religious figures into Christianity, you know?
Yeah, it's so interesting. They're always so like weirdly evocative in ways that aren't immediately clear, and that's part of why I find them so interesting. It's like, and then in victory, he was transformed into a dog, and I'm like, wait, why was that a good thing? That's awesome. There's always something a little bit inexplicable about them that makes them so much more interesting to me.
Yes, yes.
Do you have any favorite saints?
Do I? I mean, not really, honestly.
Is Perpetua in there?
Like as far as like stories go, like I couldn't tell you a lot of saint tales. You know, I just have the Golden Legend.
Hmm. Is Perpetua in there?
Almost certainly. Let's go to our table of contents and find Perpetua.
For all the Zoomers in the audience, the table of contents is like Googling a book.
I like the saints that I know are the ones that get syncretized with specific like deities. So wait, okay. Name the one again that you just said.
Perpetua.
Thank you.
She's often part of a pair.
This is one that would exist by the Middle Ages, right?
I think so, yeah. I believe she was like a martyr from like the Byzantine period.
Okay.
Whee! Yay!
Yeah, you just gotta find shit to talk about while I
Oh, it's fine.
look for Perpetua.
I'm like, okay, I'm on the border between millennial and Zoomer, So I'm not really in either generation. Like I remember growing up during a time without the internet and smartphones. Like
Oh,
I can
okay.
move freely in millennial and zoomer spaces, but I think I'm closer to a zoomer.
So Perpetua, Felicity, and Saturninus and their companions are all in one thing, and I think it's a
Yeah.
pretty short one too, because I saw it next to the Saint James the Dismembered.
Cool.
It's sandwiched in between Saint Catherine, who rules. I do like Saint Catherine. Uh, yes. Okay, this is a short one. Saints Saturninus, Perpetua, Felicity, and their companions. Saturninus was ordained bishop by disciples of the apostles and sent to the city of Toulouse. When he arrived, the demons ceased to give responses. One of the pagans said that unless Saturninus was killed, they would obtain nothing from their gods. They therefore apprehended Saturninus, and when he refused to sacrifice, tied him to a bull's legs and drove the animal from the highest point of the capital, precipitating him down the steps. And they just had a bull drag him down the steps. Down
Cool.
the step, the bottom. Thus, Saturninus, with his skull shattered and his brains spilled out, happily consummated his martyrdom. Two women gathered his body and hid it in a deep cavern for fear of the pagans, but his successors later transferred it to a more honorable place. There was another Saturninus, whom the prefect of Rome held in prison for a long time, starving him. Then he had him lifted upon a rack and beaten with thongs, clubs, and scorpions, and his flanks burned by torches. Finally, he was taken down from the rack and beheaded about AD 286 under Maximian. There was still another Saturninus in Africa,
Yay!
the brother of Saint Satyrus, who suffered martyrdom with his brother Revocatus, the latter's sister Felicity and Perpetua, a woman of noble birth. Their passion is commemorated at another time. Here we can say that when the proconsul told them to sacrifice to the idols, and they refused, they were put in jail. Perpetua's father came running in tears to the prison and said, "Daughter, what have you done? You have brought dishonor on your family. No one of your lineage has ever been in jail." When she told him that she was a Christian, he rushed at her and tried to gouge her eyes out, then went away shouting wrathfully. Blessed Perpetua had a vision that night and told her companions about it in the morning. Quote, "I saw a marvelously high golden ladder raised up to heaven, but the ladder was so narrow that only one person, and that one small, could mount it. On the right and left sides of the ladder, knives and swords were attached, so that one ascending could not look down to either side, but had to hold himself straight and look up toward heaven. Below the ladder lay a huge, hideous dragon, for fear of which no one dared to ascend. I also saw Satyrus, who, having reached the top of the ladder, looked back at us and said, 'Don't be afraid of that dragon, but climb confidently and be with me.' Hearing this, all gave thanks, knowing that they were called to martyrdom. They therefore brought before the judge, but refused to sacrifice. Oh, they were therefore brought before the judge, but refused to sacrifice. The judge had Saturninus and the other men separated from the women, and asked Felicity, 'Do you have a husband?' 'Yes,' she answered, 'but I have nothing to do with him.'" Oh yeah, Christians would kind of renounce their families.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah.
Someone asked Jesus if they should do this, and Jesus is like, "No, don't divorce your wife, but if you had the opportunity to be a eunuch, you should have taken it." Um, the judge, "Have pity on yourself, young woman, and live, especially since you have a child in your womb." Felicity, "Do to me whatever you wish, but you will never get me to do your will." Then the parents of Blessed Perpetua and her husband came, bringing Perpetua's infant child, whom she was still nursing. When her father saw her standing before the prefect, he fell on his face and cried, "My sweetest daughter, have pity on me and your sad mother, and on your pitiable husband, who will not be able to live without you." Perpetua was unmoved. The Then her father laid her son upon her shoulder, and he and her mother and husband held her hands and wept, kissing her and saying, "Have mercy on us, daughter. Stay alive with us." But she threw the infant from her
Oh
and
my
rebuked
god!
her parents, saying, "Get away from me, you enemies of God,
Fuck
because
them
I do not
kids.
know you." She threw the baby.
Christians at the
That's
time were like,
awesome.
that's badass. That's awesome that she did that.
Yeah. Seeing the martyr's constancy, the prefect subjected them to seeing the martyr's constancy, the prefect subjected them to a long scourging and put them in jail. The saints, however, were mainly concerned for Felicity, who was 8 months pregnant. They prayed for her, and suddenly the birth pains came upon her, and she brought forth a son, alive. One of the jailers said to her, "If giving birth makes you suffer so much, what will you do when you come before the prefect?" Felicity answered, "I suffer this for myself, but then God will suffer for me." The martyrs were brought out of the prison with their hands tied behind their backs and their buttocks bared, dragged through the streets, and finally thrown to the wild beasts. Satyrus and Perpetua were devoured by lions, Revocatus and Felicity by leopards, and blessed Saturninus had his head cut off about AD 256 under the emperors Valerian and Gallienus.
Well, under 2 different emperors, they got their head cut off.
Yeah,
They made the change halfway through the neck.
that's very funny. I like that.
It is kind of
Also,
wild how many
note,
of them are.
note that like the lions and the leopards are like symbols of Bacchic cult and like Kybele cult as well.
Yeah,
Uh, and when you can't control them, then they're like, you obviously suck at
right,
controlling the lions and leopards. But really, they just gave them a bunch of drugs. Like
right. They're like,
that
we
was
don't,
like the big secret for like how they had these like tame lions.
because they were zonked out of their gourds.
Yeah, they were kind of zonks.
That's cool. So they were like, also, by the way, we're gonna feed you to Christians. We have one like sober lion for killing Christians specifically.
I think like, yeah, they probably did.
Oh, you're reading up, and apparently Perpetua wrote an account of her own imprisonment and the dream she had. I bet the Christians went nuts for that. They love shit like that.
They do. In like the anarchists movement in like Italy and Spain, they would like people who were executed by the state would have their like bones passed around as relics.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, I died for labor organizing, and now people are sharing my bones. That's what I look. That's like my goals. I want people to share my bones, and I want to die in a labor struggle.
And then have people share your bones because of the labor struggle.
Well, I kind of want people to share my bones for magic reasons, but you can share them for labor if you want. What's the
What if we
difference?
spiritualize the labor reasons?
What if we spiritualize the labor reasons? We're gonna create a form of Protestantism so esoteric.
There are now 15 forms of Protestantism.
There were only 14 before?
I don't know. It's a reference to this one like XKCD joke where it's like, oh man, there's like 14 different ways to talk about this thing. It's like we should find a way to combine them all. And it's like there are 15 versions of the thing now.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's very rare that someone trying to syncretize and synthesize actually creates a synthesis.
Because it's immediately like, fuck, the People's like Congregational Church of Christ Alliances is a little bit too woke. We have to make a racist version. Fuck.
That you shouldn't make the racist version.
You shouldn't. It just keeps happening. Protestants love doing that.
Ooh. They've got a long tale on the beheading of John the Baptist.
Cool.
Also, a really long one on the Assumption of Virgin Mary.
Naturally.
This is like the Golden Legend is where we get actually like so much Christian culture. They even have a segment on the Maccabees.
Oh, cool. I wonder what the Christians were saying about the Maccabees in this era. That's interesting.
They're called the Holy Maccabees here. It's about a page long, or not even. So we could read the Maccabees
Yeah, I'm
section of the
curious.
Christian Golden Legend. Be prepared for anti-Semitism because it'll probably happen.
Yeah.
Uh,
Medieval Christians
what-
writing about Jews. Just keep
Huh?
that cap on.
Yeah, I mean, like it's we're treading in dangerous territory reading Catholic hagiographies right now. The Maccabees were 7 brothers who, with their venerable mother and the priest Eleazar, refused to eat pork flesh and were subjected to unheard of tortures, as is told in full detail in the second book of Maccabees. It is of worthy note that the Eastern Church celebrates the feast of saints of both of the Old and the New Testaments. The Western Church, on the other hand, does not celebrate the feasts of the saints of the Old Testament on the ground that they descended into hell.
Whoa.
Exceptions made for the holy innocents, in each of whom Christ was put to death, and for the Maccabees. Oh, interesting. There are 4 reasons for the churches solemnizing the feast of these Maccabees, despite the fact that they descended into hell.
Do tell.
What do we mean? See what I'm saying? Okay. The first is that they had the privilege of martyrdom, because among all the Old Testament saints, these suffered unheard of tortures. They are according to the privilege of having their passion they are accorded the privilege of having their passion celebrated. This reason is proposed in scholastic history. The second reason is the mystical significance of their number. The number 7 is the number of universality. In these 7 saints are represented all the Old Testament fathers who deserve to be celebrated, while the Church observes no feasts for them, both because they descended into limbo and because of the great multitude of new saints has slipped into their places. Nevertheless, in these 7, she pays reverence to all, because, as has been said, 7 is the number by which a universality is designated. The third reason is the example of patience under suffering. These martyrs are set before the faithful as examples, in order that their constancy may encourage the faithful to be zealous for their faith, and to be ready to suffer for the law of the gospel, as the Maccabees girded themselves steadfastly to live by the law of Moses. The fourth reason is the cause for which they suffered. They bore tortures for the defense of their law, just as the Christians suffer in defense of the law of the gospel. These last 3 reasons are offered by Master John Beleth in his Summa of the Divine Offices, Chapter 5. They didn't even tell the story. They're just like, yeah, these guys,
They got tortured.
like we have to explain some things here.
Right. Listen, here's why we're celebrating these guys who descended into hell. And they did go to hell. Remember that they went to hell. All of these guys are in hell. But here's why we're celebrating them.
Because there's 7.
There's 7 of them. And so they're like a stand-in for all of the Old Testaments. Yeah.
Normally they're like really into all the people getting their deaths, but they're like, these were martyred. They did it for the law.
Which is almost as good. They did it for pork.
They did it not for pork.
Yeah, they did it so that they didn't have to eat pork.
Oh my god, wait. These weird little segments. Septuagesima, sexagesima, quinquagesima,
I love
quadragesima.
Roman naming conventions. It's like, here's my daughters 4, 5, and 6.
I don't think these are people. These are these are the days of Lent.
Oh.
The numbered the Sundays of Lent that each have like specific stories
Oh.
to them.
Kind of reminds me of a Book of Hours, but for Lent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now that I am done doing that grinding thing in Warframe, I think it's about time for us to wrap up for this evening.
Thank you for allowing us to read some hagiographies.
Yeah, thank you for keeping the esoterica going in the back half. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed our little hagiography story time.
At some point, we should read okay, the circumcision is one of the longest ones in here for some reason. So
Yeah, we should do that. Like, we should save that for next week.
okay,
Uh,
I appreciate it.
yeah. All right, everyone. Again, I'm only able to do this because of your generous support on websites like Patreon. If you want to check that shit out, you can use command Patreon. Throw me some money. Absolutely no pressure. Let's see, what else? I think that's it for now. I'll see you next week. Bye!
Bye.